Today's webinar is about Dispense. We have a guest here who's going to help us understand how we can do the dispense in our offices and grow our business, grow our revenue with the existing number of patients that we see. Abel is the Director of Operations at Dispense. Thank you very much, Abel, for joining us today and helping our clients understand how your service can help them increase the revenue. Abel, you are a presenter. Go ahead.
Good day. Thank you, folks, for joining in our meeting here today. Again, thanking CTC and thanking Sarah for setting this up. We are basically talking about a new spin on an old idea. Due to recent law changes and modifications and healthcare industry changes over the last 5 years, new opportunities have risen, specifically in the ancillary services arena. And one of those is a very natural solution, which is basically in-house dispensing. This is something that is done every single day at every practice. You're writing the prescriptions, and they are basically being handed to the patient or electronically sent to their local pharmacy or preferred pharmacy. And in turn, the patient will then have to either go get it, it's being delivered, which causes a slew of issues, some of which are whether or not they're able to pick them up, if they do pick them up, whether or not they take them. And this is a huge, huge problem in medicine. 65% of the prescriptions actually never get picked up. We had a meeting with a big insurance carrier 2 days ago, and their in-house study says 85% of the prescriptions that they've handed out have not been picked up. This is a real issue across the country. What I'm about to talk to you about today does have limitations. There are 5 states within the country that are not allowed to participate in this program due to local regulation. And those 5 states happen to be Texas, New York, Montana, Utah, and Massachusetts. Outside of those states, every other state will allow for in-house dispensing. With that said and done, there's 1 to 2 plans that have limitations. One of them is Cigna. Cigna has yet to become part of the dispensing revolution. They are in process. A few years ago, they acquired a company called Health Springs, which was a dispensing participant, and they're looking to roll that model out within the company. So Cigna is not a participant in in-house dispensing. And then Blue Cross and Blue Shield does participate limited. So I typically tell the doctors that Blue Cross and Blue Shield is just one of those plans that is a 50-50 chance that it will go through, simply because of the way that they operate internally and nothing having to do with our program specifically. Every other plan, Humana, Care Plus, obviously Medicare, Medicaid, across the board, Mary Group, PUP, you name it, they participate. They encourage it, not only because it actually provides the service that is lacking, but because most importantly, it provides control. At the end of the day, this is really a play on control. Like everything else in medicine over the last 5 years. We've had numerous changes, and they're all geared to control and compliance. This is absolutely no different. The spin on this is that the person in control of this vehicle is the physician or the practice, and that there's a financial gain. And doing this without causing any additional workload or extra time to the practice, which is phenomenal. I'm going to walk you through this slide real quick. It's going to give you some brief idea of how this works and what we do, and then we'll be able to open up to some Q&A. First slide here, which is Rethinking in-house dispensing. This is something that we actually have available on our website. I use it a lot when we give presentations. I walk people through it just a little bit more detail, and then we can go ahead and discuss any questions you guys are going to have for us, okay? Here we go. The agenda is basically going to be broken down, who we are, how this actually works, and then how it gets started at a practice level, what the package is, what the process, what the obligation for the practice is, what's our obligation, what the math, what the numbers look like, for the practice, and why this is such a great revenue capture option. Script Dispense has been in this industry, in this business, for about 4 years. The reality is that live adjudication has only been around for 4 years. In-house dispensing in whole has been always available to physicians at one level or another. The possibility of getting a live approval and a live payment has just been available about 4 years now. And that's really the game changer. The ability to do things in real time, not having to guess, not having to send out billing, is really where this thing has come full circle. We are able to provide the A to C solution for these practices, from licensing with the state and the government boards to the credentialing or the contracting with the PBMs. For those of you not familiar with what a PBM is, a PBM is a pharmaceutical benefit management company, and 99% of the insurance companies like Humana and Aetna and Medicare, Medicaid, everyone else is part of a PBM. The PBM is in charge of keeping track of the formulary, cost, and benefits for the insurance plan. We will credential you directly with that PBM as if you were a pharmacy. The one difference is between you and a pharmacy is this is basically only available to your patients. This is not available to retail. You're not able to open your pharmacy to the public. So again, the real big glitch here is it's only available to your clients. With that said and done, if you have an urgent care center and a patient happens to walk in and you're attending that patient is now your patient and you can service them, even though they may not be a regular patient. Not only are we providing the licensing and the credentialing, but we're also providing all the medications, and we're providing the software and the hardware for you to be able to process the real-time approval and payments via the live adjudication. We also set up the compliance standards. We have not had a single pharmacy fail an inspection in 4 years. If you follow what we set up, which is very simple to do, this could be a very easy process. Take the next slide. How it works. This works seamlessly with your EMR and EHR. As long as your EMR and EHR is government approved, which most of them around today are, they qualify for the credits, you're going to be able to connect seamlessly with our system. We're SureScript certified. The practice will also be SureScript certified. So when the physician is seeing the patient and is using his electronic medical records, and he is actually submitting the prescription, on the drop-down screen for the pharmacies, his own practice will reflect as a possible pharmacy. He would select it, send the prescription, and in our web-based program down the hall at the isolated room we're calling a pharmacy, it will pull up in the queue and the process will begin. And I will explain that process in a minute. The most important thing that's going to happen here is that we're going to have that live adjudication, which is the real-time approval and billing, something we struggle with in insurance companies. It's going to obviously control the utilization. It's going to track and control all the inventories, and this is for one site or multiple site. There's one thing posted here that has changed for 2014, which it now says here that the office is paid weekly. The PBMs have changed that system to biweekly. So now instead of getting paid weekly, you get paid biweekly, and I'm going to go into that in a minute. There is no billing required, and that's due to the live adjudication. Everything happens in real time. So there's really no billing. And then obviously the big word, which is compliance. This is a heavily compliant system with all the new changes in healthcare moving along with HEDIS and MLR. This is the tool that will help you stay within your ranges. And then obviously retention, which is something we all battle with. We're all competing for the same lives. And this is a tool to help keep our lives with us. I don't know if they are able to see that, but it keeps popping up. And I apologize, by the way, something seems to keep popping up on my screen, so if it's coming up on yours, I'm trying to minimize it as soon as possible. My apologies. How we get started. There is a starter package. There's an application, and there's some documentation that is required. This entire system is based on the cooperation of the practice, the relationship that we establish, and how much of this information we're able to get up front. That's really going to facilitate getting this live and going. What the new process is, the math, and the revenue. Here we go. So the new partner process. The average time in processing this is 8 to 10 weeks. Now this is average, but I want to be honest with you. It's average because of the cooperation from the practice. The more cooperation we have from the practice in focusing and getting us the documentation we need, this could be reduced to about 6 weeks to 8 weeks at most. But we have 8 to 10 weeks because it does seem to be the time that it normally takes to get them up to life. Okay, there's an application and there's documentation that we're going to need. That documentation is information you have. It's the practice's NPI. It's the doctor's DEAs and their medical licenses. It's going to be a combination of docs that you already have and some that we're going to provide. We will then take that information and we're going to send for the state license if they don't already have a dispensing license. We're going to send for the NCPDP, which is the pharmacy license. NCPDP is the same regulatory institution that regulates regular pharmacies. They're going to regulate you as well. You're going to be given what is a non-pharmacy dispensing site license. This system does not require you to have a pharmacist or a pharmacy tech in the office. Anybody in your office is qualified to do this. How that is done is because of that NCPDP number you're going to receive. That will convert your practice into a pharmacy, and the physician license will now be considered a pharmacy license. We will then contract you with the networks of the PBMs, which are, like I explained earlier, the third party between the insurance company and the pharmacy, in this case the practice. We have all the necessary signage that must be posted by state and federal regulation, as well as marketing that we provide. The practice must complete an FWA, or fraud, waste, and abuse training. Even if you've done it on the medical side, we must do it on the pharmaceutical side, on the RX side. They want to make sure that they're not abusing the ability that they will have to impact their bottom line by prescribing or abusing prescribing habits. We will then deliver the equipment as contracted, the printer, the scanner. There's a backup log. There's some things missing on that layout. There's also a laptop. There's labels. There's pharmacy bags, and I'm going to go through everything that's included in a minute. But basically, the bulk of what's included, which is everything, will be delivered at that point. The Place First RX order to include the labels and pharmacy bags is basically your first medical order for the medication. Keep in mind, this system works so that you're able to dispense in real time, which means you're going to have a small inventory in your practice at any given point in time. We are not in the business of loading you with medication, but you will have a small inventory, and that's usually about a 2-week supply worth of medication. The medication does come prepackaged and pre-sealed. Therefore, there will be no counting of pills or missing pills. Inventory is done by bottles only, and it eliminates the liability to the physician in the practice. Then we will set up the training, whether it be web, conference, or live, depending on the necessity of the practice. Sometimes we do all three. Sometimes one is enough. And once we get to that point, we go live. So that is the 8 to 10 week process. Again, this is all reliant on the ability of the practice to communicate with us and get us the documentation at a reasonable time frame so we can move forward. Okay. Let's go over the math a little bit. I apologize for the screen that keeps popping up. This template shows 3 categories. It'll say low, medium, and high. What this is an example of volume per practice, or patients per day. So for us, a 10 to 20 patient per day practice seems to be on the lower side of the scale. Medium is 21 or 35, and high is anything over 36. Some of you may see 100 people a day. But we separate it this way because that's how we've been given the math by the PBMs, and we pass it on to you folks. for the basis of this example, I'm going to go on the low side. I'm going to use 20 patients per day. I just read an article, and this is pretty public information. You can look this up. National average prescriptions per patient is about, and this number has increased drastically. This is a 2013 report. It's actually between 8 to 12 prescriptions a patient, which is pretty high on the national average. I am not going to use those numbers. I'm going to use 4. I'm going to use half that. So 20 patients per day at 4 prescriptions per patient. We're talking about 80 scripts a day. The average net reimbursement, net, not gross, to the practice is about $10 per prescription. So if you did 80 prescriptions at $10, you made $800 per day. There are 21, 22 working days in a month. We're going to say 20. Just to round it off, we're talking $16,000 monthly additional revenue. Obviously, if you're open 12 months a year, it's equal to about $190,000. I want you to keep in mind that this is a net. This is not a gross. Now, this is actually the side effect of the process. As good as this looks and sounds, if it's half right, and you make another $95,000 a year, another $90,000 a year, which makes all the sense in the world. But because of all the new regulation in healthcare, the HEDIS reforms and compliance requirements and the adhesion to the patient and everything else that we are dealing with today, they add as much value as the economic side does because it's becoming a real issue. Now keep in mind that everything I'm talking about here today is RX, but there is a full line of over-the-counter and nutraceutical products as well. Medicine has shifted from reactive to proactive, and we're dealing with preventive medicine more and more every day. So you will have the ability to also fill those supplements and nutraceuticals that you feel could be beneficial to your patient, whether it be vitamin D, vitamin C, the B complexes, as well as the aspirins of today and other over-the-counter remedies you find useful. So you'll be able to have those. Keep in mind, most insurance companies, or all of them that I'm aware of, don't necessarily cover those items. Those are cash and carry. But typically when you give your patient the prescriptions and they go to the pharmacy, you also prescribe for those and they pick them up at the pharmacy. They'll be able to do that at your location and complete the circle of service, not having to send them to the pharmacy, which is the whole point of this. This is where I got a little bit ahead of myself here with the nutraceutical, because that's what the next slide was about, was basically the nutraceutical and over-the-counter, and I kind of went over this with you already. I want you to understand that our system will manage all the inventory and all the record keeping, all the compliance and all the reporting with all the state agencies, with all the federal agencies. You are able to do as much or as little as you wish, and I say this because there is your regular pharmaceuticals. Then you even have controls, which some physicians could have. Now, we don't typically recommend them to have controls. I believe that brings on a slew of other issues that we have to deal with. But it can absolutely be done. Then the nutraceuticals and obviously the over-the-counters are, I think, a given. Our system will keep track of the inventory, like I mentioned earlier, the reporting, which, by the way, because it's a web-based system, you can get from anywhere at any given point in time. You're not waiting for me to print out a specific report. You're not waiting for an email or a monthly invoice. It's all being done at the click of a button at any given point in time of day. What our idea is, what the strategy behind this is obviously the live adjudication. That's what changed the game. Until that actually came into play, you could dispense all day, you would bill or you would charge the patient cash, and good luck getting reimbursed from the insurance company. Whether or not it was a formulary was a question, and whether or not you were going to get paid for it was another. So you're going to basically capture lost practice revenue. Everything you can bring into your office because of this new ancillary industry where physicians are doing more and more in their office, whether it be imaging or blood work or anything else. Of all the things you could bring in, this is probably the lowest cost implementation product with the highest revenue or return. It happens also to be the one that is most important to your patients. This is a very transparent business model. We actually will be contracting you directly with the PBMs. We're going to be contracting you directly with the wholesalers. And in turn, you will pay the wholesalers and the PBMs will pay you directly. We are completely transparent about this business model. We believe this is the only way to do business in 2013, specifically in this arena. And this is the best way for the physician to also feel in control of his practice and what's going on in this business. And I believe this last slide is basically our contact and information that will be available to you. I do believe that there will be a Q&A or a request for info at the end of this, and you guys can feel free to contact us, but I'm leaving that on there for you to view. And I have completed the explanation of what it is we do. Soren, if you want to join us.
Yes, thank you very much. We will be hanging out. I'm sorry I forgot to mention it in the beginning of webinar. But any question you guys may have, you can just put it on the question list and we will go over at the end. So, but it's a really good service and product you have. But before people ask any question, I have a couple of questions. If you don't mind,
okay.
Can I ask you that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So this is the time to do it.
What I know the time frame you said 8 to 10 weeks, correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Correct.
Okay. What is the initial investment that our client would have to do?
Okay, so the initial investment varies per state, and I'm going to explain why that is. Every state has a different. Oh, everyone's in Florida. Oh, I apologize. So then the fee is the same across the board. The cost per practice is $39.99, $3,999.99, $4,000. That is the initial startup cost. That includes 2 MD licenses, the unlimited PAs and RX, because they can also dispense. That includes the pharmacy license, which is the NCPDP, the SureScript certification, which they will have in their practice. That includes the software license, which is one time. There's no upgrade fees. There's no maintenance fees. It's what it is. There's the equipment, which is a laptop, a double laser tray printer, and a barcode scanner. That also includes the credentialing or the contracting with all the insurance companies. All that participate, at least Cigna, as I mentioned before, does not. This would also include all the compliance setup, the training and support, which is not only initial but ongoing, and then the pharmacy labels and pharmacy bags, which are also ongoing. The only thing not included in that startup cost is the medication. That is a specific fee per location. The inventory is something that we work with each individual practice on their specific formulary. We will come up with a small inventory, and all inventories are paid up front. So you will be connected through our system to the repackagers, and when you place your order, credit cards on file, they will ship and they will bill the next day. Florida is a non-consignment state, so it is all paid up front, and then you receive the medication. With that said, you're never going to have more than 2 weeks supply, because our business model is not to bury you in medicine. It's to partner with you.
Good. I have a couple of questions, but before that, BJ, one of the attendees asking is, what is the percentage that they get? I think he meant to say.
Okay, so that's a phenomenal question, BJ.
Yeah, I think cement is what would be the percentage-wise commission that the client would get.
Absolutely. I think that is a phenomenal question, BJ, and I'll tell you how I'm going to answer that. The average cost of medication to the practice, the average cost, is about $10.50. Some of these medications could cost you $3. Some of them cost you $20. But the average cost is $10.50. The average gross reimbursement, including the dispensing fee, because they do give you between $1 to $1.80, which they refer to as a dispensing fee, simply for grabbing the bottle off the shelf, scanning it, and putting a label on it. Including that fee, you're looking at about a gross reimbursement of about $22 on average. So if you take the $10.50 investment from the 22, I apologize, 222.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, so if you take the $10.50 cost from the $22 gross payment or reimbursement, you're looking about an $11.50 profit. I used the number of 10 earlier, just because it was easier to round off. But you're looking about $11.50 per medication. On your investment, it's a 200% return. It's your money and 100% more.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Okay. We have a second question. Yes, this webinar is recorded and it will be on our website within 2 weeks. So you can go and check. I have a third question is in regards to the patient that have insurance that does not cover the full price of a medication and the patient has to pay remaining. How does that work? And as far as name, brand, and generic medication, will the patient have that choice?
Wonderful question again. Well, that's a two-part question, okay? So the first part of that is, and I believe you're referring to maybe there's a patient copay, which a lot of insurances do have. The system, because it works in real time and it's connected to the PBMs, it does recognize copays. So if a specific medication has a $30 reimbursement per se, and the patient has a $10 copay, the system will detail that it will reimburse you $20 and that the practice must pick up the $10, just like it would happen at the pharmacy.
Right.
That $10 also belongs to the practice.
Right.
So the money all stays with the practice. There's no one to pay. That is his money, but that would be a total sum of both, not one on top of the other. So again, medication that's reimbursing about $30 and there's a $10 copay, the insurance company is going to pay you $20, and it'll print an invoice requesting the $10 copay from the patient, the same way it would happen at the pharmacy. As far as availability of drugs, this entire program was designed and created to work with specifically generic medication. Not to say that we don't have branded medication available, we do. But two things are happening with brand. First of all, the movement in the insurance industry is that generic is the way to go. It is less expensive, it's usually made by the same manufacturer, and it is on their formulary. Branded medications, on the other hand, are limited, the ones that do not have a generic equivalent. However, they're costly to actually acquire and maintain, and they have a much higher copay. And I'll give you a perfect explanation of this. There's a medication called Crestor, I'm sure you guys are familiar with. The average cost of Crestor is between $200 to $230 on any given day. The average reimbursement from an insurance company on this medication is about $160, which means that there is a $70 difference. Now, you're not in the business of giving meds away, so you're probably going to tack at least $10 onto that. And you would ask the patient for $80. This happens every day at a pharmacy. But the pharmacy could take that kind of risk because that's how they've been designed to work. Now, not everyone you offer this to is going to be able to pay $80. They're going to say, no, I would like to talk to my doctor and get a generic equivalent. For that reason, this is specifically driven to be more of a generic program than a brand. I don't recommend the brands. I don't think that makes sense. Most patients are going to bark about their payment. By the way, it's the same one they're going to make at Walgreens or CVS or the Pillbox or any other retail pharmacy in the street. But they can afford to carry that medication and keep it on stock for months. At a local level, I don't think it's a wise decision. By the way, on that note, there's only a few that do not have a generic equivalent. Crestor happens to be one of those.
Got it. And to add to that, the generic is much better for the physician themselves too, because it's a less investment on the inventory.
Absolutely, 100%. Which, by the way, on that subject, there's something I did leave out of this equation. I want you guys to know that this system was designed with the insurance company in mind, as well as the patient, as well as the practice. I say this because you can have 30, 60, or 90-day supplies. All insurance companies today approve a 90-day supply of medication. Furthermore, they almost prefer it because most of them will waive a month's copay. So, for example, They may have a $10 copay on a 30-day supply. They're going to have a $30 sample on a 3-month supply. They will usually waive one of those months and they pay 20 instead of the 30. Now, for the practice, you may think you're missing out. Hey, I'm missing out those $10 extra dollars. You're actually not. The insurance company reimburses almost threefold on a 90 to fourfold on a 90-day supply. So on a regular 30-day supply where your reimbursement could be $40 or $30, on a 90-day supply could be $205. So the difference is significant. The return is significant. Again, the only time you're not able to do that 90-day supply is on a new medication. You have a new patient or you have an existing patient, you're giving them a new medication. We're not sure what the reactions are going to be. You cannot give them a 90-day supply from day one. It has to be 30. But the second refill or the second dose could be 90. Now that I've mentioned refills, our system will also track those for you. And as they are due, it will pull up a refill queue by days, and it'll let you know, hey, in the next 10 days or 6 days or 5 days, these meds are going to be due. And you can contact the patient ahead of time. You can let them know that they're ready. You can actually fill them a few days before. This will not only work in that instance, but it will work also when the existing prescriptions that you have floating out there at those pharmacies come back and ask you for a refill request. You'll be able to take those refill requests, fill them in the office, call the patient, explain to him it's a new service, and you will not send it back out to the pharmacy. You start to capture retroactive work you've done.
And I think another thing that I wanted to point it out to all of our audience is pharmacy billing to the insurance company is a lot different than how our medical practice billing works. It's not like you have to follow up and so much. You get approved right before you give medicine to the patient, and the money comes into your bank account in 2 to 4 days, correct?
No, actually, it is correct until the money part. The money actually gets sent to the practice on a 2-week schedule. They're always running 2 weeks behind. So when we initially start this program, other than the cash copays or the cash patients that you do service, the insurance reimbursements, you'll get your first check usually within 30 to 35 days. And after that, it's every 2 weeks because they're paying you 2 weeks in arrears. Right. What you're getting in real time is the approval and the payment.
Right, and the thing is once it's approved, it's never denied afterwards, right?
Oh, absolutely not. If you're going to get a denial, you get it on the spot. And usually, to be quite honest with you, when you get a denial, it's usually because it's too early. A prescription has been filled or it was picked up recently and it's too soon. Our system is connected to the national database. So if we have a patient that was at Walgreens last week and picked up the same medication and now comes to visit you and tries to get it again, the system will recognize it's too soon and it'll say, too early, must wait 21 days. And then they'll tell you exactly when you can fill it.
I see. That's perfect. Now, I have one more question here. It talks about the allergies. Until now, the patient would go to the pharmacy and a pharmacist would consult with them about their allergies and all the other things. How would that work when you bring a pharmacy in-house? The MD has to do all that?
Absolutely. And you know what? Again, a phenomenal question. Our system does 4 things, and I didn't get into this, and I'm kind of kicking myself. I didn't see a slide about this, so I'm gonna walk you through this for a minute. Let's go through the process so I can answer your question. When a physician sees the patient, a PA and RNP, and they write a prescription, or by the way, if they're not on an EMR EHR and they're still handwriting these prescriptions, we could still do it. The difference between when you handwrite a prescription and you use the electronic medical records is the input. On electronic medical records, all the demographic information in the prescription will transfer over, avoiding duplication of entry. But when you do it manually, you would have to enter it at least the first time. It'll keep it from memory, and then the next time you're just adding whatever medication. Now, moving forward, when the patient is being seen and the prescription is being submitted electronically, which I'm supposing more and more doctors are having to do now due to regulation, the system will do 4 things, and they happen pretty quickly. I'm going to say they happen in about 40 seconds, just so you have an idea of the turn time that this actually happens. The first thing it's going to do is going to check the eligibility of the patient on his pharmaceutical benefits. Something that you might have done at the front door on the medical side, this is doing it on the pharmaceutical side. It's not always, the pharmacy and the medical are not always the same entity or are not always the same approvals. So that's something that we will do seamlessly and automatically once it gets to our system. The second thing it's going to do, it's going to do a safety check, which is going to avoid duplication of medication, something I referred to earlier. The third thing it does is exactly what you just asked me about. It's called the DUR, drug interaction. It's going to check not only with their personal allergies, it's also going to check with other medication they're taking. And then lastly, it'll come up with the approval and the payment. Now going back to the drug interaction for a minute, a very common red flag that happens during that process is when a patient has high blood pressure. High blood pressure is one of those things that typically get handled by 2 low-dose meds. When you enter the second med, it'll bring up a red flag and say that there's contradicting ingredients because there's another med on board that already does similar or the same. That is easily overridden with the prescription and the diagnosis from the doctor that transferred over when you did the demographic and you send the prescription over. The fact that he has high blood pressure, you're able to enter there and enter a note and explain and justify why that med brought up a contradiction, and you're able to move forward. Now, one other thing. Let's say you saw a patient and they did take the medication and you've dispensed it and they have a $30 copay included. And they tell you, hey, we don't have that money. We don't have the $30. Well, by law, you're required to pick up those $30. So you must ask the patient for that money. If they do not have it, you can simply do a cancel and a return. It will put everything back in inventory and it will cancel the transaction. You will have to enter notes into the account that say patient did not pay copay or hardship or whatever the case may be. Now there is one exception to that rule. And it cannot be, by the way, it cannot be the rule, it's the exception. If a patient is truly having hardship and this medication is absolutely necessary and the practice decides they must have this medication and they're willing to not take that copay on that specific day for that specific med, there's a letter that is a template that you can use that basically says the patient is going through hardship, we feel it medically necessary for them to